Hey, what's up guys? Nick from Soho Motorsports, and today we're going to be talking about John's 2010 NISSAN 370z V1 Nismo V2 air-to-air supercharger kit and how we picked up over 200 wheel on this setup. These are always great builds just because the client originally does it in stages. So he came to us in 2022, did our intakes, had a full exhaust, and did the Ecutech calibration on this vehicle. Enjoyed it for a couple of years, and now here we are 2 years later with the supercharger setup. So let's dive back and talk about what the vehicle had prior to it coming here and getting the V2 supercharger kit, and then we can go from there. So in 2022, John came to us to get a calibration along with our Soho intakes. As like I said, he had the full exhaust on the vehicle, and we wanted to maximize the vehicle out on pump gas to see what kind of power it could put down. So when he came in 2022, this vehicle put down 328 wheel and 270 foot-pounds of torque. Now it is a manual, and that is really good power for this setup on pump gas. And so drove it around for a couple of years, and here we are now with the supercharger setup. Now, prior to doing the supercharger setup or any forced induction application on the 370zs, we always recommend doing an oil pressure test on your vehicle to see if you have proper oil pressure, low oil pressure, or just enough oil pressure to get you by. Now I say just enough because some people will do the test and they'll say, I'm okay, and then they'll be in trouble a few months down the road. And the reason why I say that is on this vehicle, we did an oil pressure test and found that the oil pressure was low. And lo and behold, once we pulled the lower oil pan, we were able to find material in the actual oil pan from the oil gallery gaskets. And so we were able to save this vehicle from having catastrophic failure in the future. Like I say in my previous videos, a lot of times when these things do fail, it is because an oil gallery gasket does blow out, it does lose oil pressure. Now that's not to say there are other circumstances that causes these things to fail. One of the major ones that we do see is because of that. Obviously you lose oil pressure. It's the same thing as losing blood pressure in your body. You do that, you pass out, you lose oil pressure in a car runs low on oil, then you have a failure. So let's dive into this vehicle and talk about what other modifications we did into this build as far as the clutch. Now this is a manual, and obviously with the stock clutch, you are not going to be able to hold the power on a supercharger setup or even a turbo setup. So we upgraded the clutch to a Z-Speed Super 6 and also did the C-Mac. And so now that the clutch components are taken care of and he's ready to go with the boost setup, this is going to be ready to put down the power. So let's talk about the power portion, which is going to be the V2 air-to-air supercharger kits with the turbo guard setup. This is the setup that he wanted to go with, and so I'll pan over it so you can see exactly how this setup looks. This does have the rear serpentine belt drive on it, and so this is an older order on this vehicle, and so we were able to do the serpentine belt on this vehicle. The cog systems have been resolved. We are starting to push those out, and so you should start to see those videos coming more and more and more. We ran into an issue with those, as many people are aware about that, and we are able to resolve that, and so now we have a 100% success ratio with that cog drive. Be on the lookout for more videos about that new setup. And so diving back into this vehicle here, let's talk about what went into it. Now this is going to be our standard V2 air-to-air kit that comes with the 1050 and 340 liter per hour fuel pump. So enough to get you what you need to on pump gas on the stock motor. And so with all that being said, full exhaust, V2 air-to-air setup, turbo guard. Let's see what kind of power this vehicle put down. And so on this setup at 13.66 PSI, this vehicle was able to put down 566 horsepower and 395 foot-pounds of torque. Now, if you look at the graph, very beautiful graph. It's a very linear graph. Like I say, whenever you do a supercharger setup, it's basically taking the naturally aspirated setup and basically just magnifying it. So if you're here, supercharger setup is going to be like here. You're just going to be moving it up and having more power under the power band or under the curve. And so this is going to be a very fun vehicle. As you can see, it does still have the stock wheels and tires on it. V1 wheels always are going to look good on a V1. V1 wheels look good on anything. Let's just end the conversation there and the debate there. They look good on anything. You can put it on a G, you can put it on a 350Z. It looks good on anything. Those are great looking wheels. And so this vehicle does look good. It is lowered, so it does have a nice little stance to it. Now it has the bite to match the bark. Now, one thing I want to bring to you guys' attention, this vehicle does have the blue pulley. And a lot of times we recommend the blue pulley for our clients that have either high flow cats, or they don't want to make too much boost, or they're running the turbo guard setup. On some applications we have seen where if you do run the standard silver pulley, which is going to be termed the 8-pound pulley, you will see a lot of boost. On this vehicle initially had the silver pound, we put it on the rollers and saw that it was making about 14 PSI at 7,000 RPM. So we drop down to the blue pulley, and that allows us to get right below that 14 PSI by redline, which is what I usually recommend staying within, especially if you're on pump gas. And I'll put up the graph so I can show you exactly how much difference you see whenever you're switching over from the silver pulley to the blue pulley on the same vehicle. A lot of people ask, hey, what kind of power am I going to see, or what kind of boost difference am I going to see? It's about 1 to 2 PSI. So every time you drop a boost pulley, you're going to drop about 1 to 2 PSI, and vice versa. Anytime you increase a boost pulley, say you go from the blue to the silver, which is going to be the 8-pound, and then the silver to the black, which is going to be the 9-pound, you're going to see an increase of 1 to 2 PSI across the power band. So keep that in mind whenever you're trying to determine what kind of power you're wanting to make and what kind of modifications are on the vehicle, because that will determine how much boost you do make at redline, as a supercharger will make peak boost at redline. So like I said, the supercharger will make peak boost at redline. Unlike a turbo will make peak boost lower in the RPM band. One thing to point out about our kits, as we always say, is we try to make everything look stock or as if it came from the factory. So you'll see we still were able to retain the stock Nismo cover on this vehicle, which is a very high dollar item. It's a very rare item. So being able to utilize and still retain that cover still makes the engine bay look like the Nismo V1 as it should. So Nismo brace, everything is still retained here. Everything is tucked up nicely behind the headlight. And the stock hood still works as well too. So there's nothing crazy you have to do to modify the hood or anything like that. So with this supercharger kit, we try to make it to where it's a very plug and play kit, very minimal modifications to the actual chassis of the vehicle to allow the supercharger kit to work.